Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in time and space. Welcome to Just the Word TV, and thank you for joining our daily morning devotion. This channel is built on one mission to help you what God actually said, not tradition and just the Word. So, again, we've been looking at Proverbs chapter 6, or Proverbs in general, for the past few days, and more specifically, Proverbs chapter 6. And in the earlier parts of Proverbs chapter 6, Solomon outlines a series of warnings regarding specific dangers. He discusses the financial risk of guaranteeing someone else's debt, the poverty that comes from laziness, and the social destruction caused by a person with a corrupt character. These verses describe the chaotic results of living without discipline or foresight. But starting in verse 20, the text shifts from describing problems to offering a solution. Solomon moves away from the specific disasters of life and focuses on the preventative measure, wisdom. The central theme here is that wisdom is not just a tool for fixing problems after they happen, it is a defense mechanism designed to protect you before trouble ever arrives. So, the logic presented in this section here is that human judgment is often flawed. When left to our own devices, we are easily swayed by emotions, flattery, or attractive appearances. The instruction provided in verses 20 to 25 suggests that the only way to navigate these hazards is to have a deeply ingrained moral code, a set of instructions that guide you automatically. This section explains how to internalize that guidance and exactly how it functions to keep a person safe. So, looking at verse 20, hold on to instruction. My son, keep thy father's commandment, and forsake not the law of thy mother. So the passage begins with a directive about retention. The words keep and forsake not imply that losing hold of wisdom is a passive process. It happens if you aren't paying attention. Wisdom is not a permanent trait that you are born with, it is something that must be actively maintained. Solomon uses the imagery of parental instruction, father's commandment, and law of thy mother to represent trusted authority and foundational teaching. In a practical sense, this refers to the core values and ethical frameworks passed down to us. These are the rules of life that are often learned early on: honesty, diligence, self control, and integrity. The logic here is simple: instruction acts as a map. If you are hiking in dangerous territory, the map is only useful if you keep it in your hand. If you forsake the map, meaning you ignore it or leave it behind, you are immediately vulnerable to getting lost. This verse establishes the requirement of consistency. You cannot benefit from principles that you only follow when it is convenient. To work, the law must be kept constantly. Next, looking at verse 21. Bind them continually upon thy heart, and tie them about thy neck. Moving beyond simple obedience, verse 21 explains the method of internalization. Solomon instructs the reader to bind these teachings on the heart and tie them around the neck. In the context of this writing, the heart represents the seat of the will, the mind, and the emotion. It is where decisions are made. To bind wisdom to the heart means to integrate it into your personality and your decision making process. It suggests that wisdom shouldn't be an external rulebook you check occasionally, it should be part of who you are. The second metaphor, tying them about the neck, suggests two things: adornment and portability. Something tied about around your neck goes everywhere you go. It is always accessible. It also implies that your inheritance to wisdom should be visible to others, much like a necklace or a chain. The practical takeaway here is that superficial knowledge isn't enough to protect you. You might know the rules, but if they aren't bound to your mindset, you will likely abandon them under pressure. This verse argues that true safety comes when your principles are so tightly connected to your identity that you cannot be easily separated from them. Next, looking at verse 22. When thou goest, it shall lead thee. When thou sleepest, it shall keep thee. And when thou awakest, it shall talk with thee. This verse outlines the comprehensive nature of wisdom. It describes three states of existence: activity, rest, and waking thought. When thou goest, it shall lead thee refers to the daily activity and decision making. When a person has internalized wisdom, as described in verse 21, they don't have to antagonize over every choice. The wisdom leads them. It becomes a proactive guide, steering them away from bad deals, dangerous places, or unethical actions before they get involved. When thou sleepest, it shall keep thee, speaks to the peace of the mind that comes from living a disciplined life. Anxiety often stems from unaddressed problems, guilt, or fear of consequences. Wisdom keeps or guards you during sleep because you have managed your affairs correctly. You aren't awake worrying about a lie you told or a debt you can't pay. And then when thou awakest, it shall talk with thee. It's a personification of wisdom. It suggests that your first thoughts in the morning are informed by your principles. It acts as an inner counselor or a dialogue, helping you set your mindset for the day ahead. So the progression is clear. Wisdom is not just a list of don'ts. It is an active, living companion that influences your walk, protects your rest, and informs your thinking. Next, verse 23. For the commandment is a lamp, and the law is light, and reproofs of instructions are the way of life. Here, Solomon uses light metaphors to explain how wisdom functions in a dark and confusing world. So, looking at the lamp provides immediate, focused illumination for the step right in front of you. A light generally refers to the ambient illumination of the environment, for example, like the sun. The text suggests that specific commandments help us with specific decisions. The lamp, while the broader law or moral teaching illuminates your entire worldview, the light. This combination allows you to see obstacles, pitfalls, and the correct path clearly. The verse concludes by stating that reproofs of instruction, which translates to correction or discipline, are the way of life. This is a crucial practical point. No human is perfect. Everyone drifts off course. Correction is the feedback loop that gets you back on track. Many people view correction as negative or hurtful. However, this verse reframes correction as a life saving mechanism. Just as a driver needs to constantly adjust the steering wheel to stay in the lane, a person needs reproofs to stay on the way of life. Without the light to see and the correction to adjust, a crash is inevitable. Next, verse 24. To keep thee from the evil woman, from the flattery of the tongue of a strange woman. The text now applies the previous principles to a specific high stakes threat, seduction. While Solomon specifically warns against the evil woman or the adulteress, the principle applies to any temptation that uses flattery and appeal to entrap someone. Remember, Solomon has personified wisdom as a woman, right? And there are different types of women, there are different types of wisdom. So, what Solomon is talking about here is the adulterous type of wisdom, the evil type of wisdom. So the key word to look at here is flattery. Temptation rarely presents itself as something destructive. It usually disguises itself as something beneficial, pleasurable, or ego boosting. Whether it is a fraudulent business partner, a bad investment, or an illicit relationship, the trap is baited with smooth words. Wisdom acts as a filter against this flattery. Because the wise person has the lamp and light mentioned in verse 23, they can see past the smooth words. They recognize the danger hidden behind the attractive exterior. The logic is that if you are guided by your principles rather than your ego, flattery loses its power to manipulate you. Verse 25. Lust not after her beauty in thine heart, neither let her take thee with her eyelids. The final verse in this section traces the source of the problem back to the internal state. The instruction is to lust not in thine heart. Solomon identifies that the battle is won or lost internally before any physical action takes place. Visual cues, such as beauty or eyelids, just pointing towards captivating glances, or just describing captivating glances, are the external triggers. However, the danger lies in the internal response. If a person allows desire to take root in their heart, the external trap will successfully capture them. This connects back to the very beginning of the passage. If wisdom is bound to the heart, there is no room for destructive lust to take root. The practical meaning is that one must guard their mind and immediate reactions. You cannot always control what you see, but you can control what you fantasize about or desire. By checking the desire immediately, wisdom prevents the physical consequences that follow. So Proverbs chapter 6, verses 20 to 25 provide a systematic explanation of how character protects a person from ruin. The logic flows from the inside out. First, the reception. You must receive and retain good instruction. Then, internalization. You must make that instruction part of your identity. Application. Once internalized, it guides your daily actions, protects your peace, and informs your thoughts. and then illumination. It provides the clarity and correction needed to navigate life. And then finally, protection. It is established, it, basically, this established system acts as a shield against the deception of flattery and the pull of desire. The passage teaches that safety is not about luck, it is about preparation. By binding wisdom to the heart, a person is equipped to see through the beauty of temptation and recognize the trap underneath, securing their path before they ever stumble. And what this particular section that we're looking at today reminds me of the most is King Saul, right? King Saul was the type of king who is the perfect example of what it means not to have wisdom binded upon thy neck, right? And what am I specifically talking about? You're probably gonna hear me talk about this a lot, but Saul and his decision to perform the sacrifice and not wait for Samuel to come and perform the sacrifice. That was Saul, King Saul, um, basically leaning on his human wisdom. He was basically succumbing to what he was seeing. He was not focusing on the fact that, or using wisdom and understanding and learning to have patience and waiting for Saul, waiting for Samuel to come and perform the sacrifice. So, in an effort to expedite the process, right? Because that's what human nature wants to do. It doesn't like to wait. It has no patience. It wants to speed up the process. So, with human nature, what Saul decides he's going to do is he's just going to perform the sacrifice. And the main point is this: when you decide that wisdom is not important anymore, or you decide that you're not going to train wisdom into your spirit, when situations come about where you have no time to really respond, to think about a response, all you're gonna have in the back of your mind, all you're gonna have built up is what you decided to develop in your character, right? And in that particular moment, it's gonna be either ugly or it's gonna be good. It's always gonna be what it is that you choose to develop. So until next time, I ask that you stay grounded, I ask that you stay humbled, and above all else, stay aligned with just the word. Thank you.